What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Days back again with another video. So today we are going to do Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline. Ooh, I remember Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline. That was oh man, they taking me way back. Um, so yeah, if y'all was fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm just gonna be real with you. Yu-Gi-Oh! was like my Pokemon, pretty much. Yeah, Pokemon, and then you had Yu-Gi-Oh. You know what I'm saying? Which side are you choosing? I'm gonna choose Yu-Gi-Oh because Yu-Gi-Oh was like realistic to me. You know what I'm saying? Pokemon, I know Pokemon was like animals and stuff, but Yu-Gi-Oh was like a card game. You know what I'm saying? And people still play the card game, and that's a good thing. I remember back then when dual monsters, saying the god cards, had the arm sleeve dual the dual sleeve uh wrist thing, you know what I'm saying, put the cards on and stuff. I remember all that. I had all that back then, you know what I'm saying? I loved Yu-Gi-Oh for real. I still got my cards to this day. Um But yeah, so we about to check this video out. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This channel Days Reacts, and also please like and comment and subscribe Progress Gaming, which is the gaming channel. And let's go ahead and get into it, y'all. So, and shout out to Crunchyroll for the video too, for the Yu-Gi-Oh timeline and Lord Explain. So let's go ahead and let's get it.
Yes. We are back.
And yes, the thing that's on his wrist, I used to have one of those on God because I thought like when you had it on you, you know what I'm saying, and somebody asked you to do and stuff, you put it on and stuff. Then I thought it was gonna have like a hologram come out and stuff, and whatever card you play on there and stuff on the thing, it'll give out a hologram and stuff, and the monster will come out and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That I thought I was gonna do that, but you know how it is. A toy is a toy. But man, what a time to be alive around Yu-Gi-Oh, man. And RIP to the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh. May he rest in peace and stuff. But like I say, man, Yu-Gi-Oh was top notch, man. And they got us with that with this thing right here. They did get us with that. The thing on his arm. They got us good with that. You know what I'm saying? Had that. Thought we had a hologram of the monster and stuff, scared people off and stuff, you know what I'm saying? I remember this part right here. I remember they had this in Party City, the Millennium Puzzle and stuff, you know what I'm saying? By that Millennium Puzzle, in Party City, man. Oh, man. And then the wrist cuff, you know what I'm saying? Put the stars on there. Oh, shoot. You know what I'm saying? Yu-Gi-Oh was the show, man. Yu-Gi-Oh was the show. Let's get back into it.
Once again, and this time, we are talking about the classic anime,
Hold on, y'all.
about the legendary Duel Master. Yes, folks, today we're doing a timeline video for the one and only Yu-Gi-Oh! A few things to keep in mind before we start. Compared to other series, we've done timelines like Evangelion, where the many timelines all play a part in the grand narrative. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a series made to sell cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, GX, and 5DS, tons
Yeah.
and tons of people worked on these shows and plots, and canon for kids anime isn't going to be as consistent as the other series. And there's not too many hard dates, so we'll do our best to spell it all out for you. We're only covering the first 3 shows because
Yeah.
Zexal, Arc 5, and Reigns are supposedly separate canons.
Before we get into it, so yes, this is my era right here. Yu-Gi-Oh! The original, then GX, and then 5Ds. And I'm gonna tell you my critique on these 3.
We're only covering the first 3 shows because Zexal, Arc 5, and Reigns are.
And these 3 right here, Zexo, Arc 5, and Reigns, these don't count. You know what I'm saying? They don't count in my generation. So like you said, they're canon. So hey, you know what I'm saying? They don't even exist. Okay, so but the top three, Yu-Gi-Oh, Duel Monsters, and then GX and 5Ds were like, you know what I'm saying? That's the real timeline to me. So I'm glad he's doing that. And yeah, let's get into the real. But I will critique on all three of them though, because to be real with you, only like two of the three. So yeah, let's get into it.
Supposedly separate canons.
Before people send me to the Shadow Realms for my pronunciation, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal is the original Japanese pronunciation. But in the dub, it is pronounced as Zexal, which is what I will call Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, aka Zexal.
But some people have speculated that there was in fact a timeline split where we have a 5Ds timeline and another timeline where Zexal and Arc 5 takes place. This is possibly due to Kaiba Corp and Seto Kaiba dying, NRD. You know what? I'll get back to that later. Anyway, Season 0 is also not included in this timeline, and the characters from previous series who show up in Arc 5 are considered to be from alternate dimensions and not actually the same exact people from their respective series. Also,
Right.
while we're using the English names, we're going by the dates given by the Japanese version of the series. Many dubbed episodes of GX and 5DS were cut, and some timeline facts were only stated in those cut episodes. Furthermore, when it comes to the original show, everything that takes place in the 1000 BC period was changed to 3000 BC in the dub for some unknown reason. Now, with all that's out of the way, it's time for children's card game anime lore. Also, it's time to, the whole bit. Okay, let's do the same old gag where I turn the board around. Spin this around. I'm just gonna, okay. Whew, yeah, sit back down. By the way, this dual disc cuts into your wrists. Fun fact.
Yeah, it does cut
It
some
hurts.
people's wrists.
Also, this cuts into my fingers. Also hurts. I'm doing this for you, kids. I'm doing this all for you. The earliest time events in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are known to have taken place in the anime canon roughly around 8000 BC. There are two separate incidents to mention that comes from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And the 5DS series. The first comes from OG Yu-Gi-Oh! With the mythical Atlantis. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Canon, it was an advanced society where people lived happily together with the spirits, which were the real-life dual monsters. Long story short, Atlantis got destroyed because people's desires turned their hearts dark and they lost their connections to the spirits. Damn. It's like capitalism. The Atlantis story was basically a minor part of a filler arc, whereas 5D's incident at least played into the show's lore a little more. Way before there were special mega cards, Yusei Fudo and the motorcycle riding gang could use the actual Crimson Dragon and Crimson Devil, aka Red Nova, fought in Nazca. An ancient signer, a 5D specific term, helped the Crimson Dragon seal the Crimson Devil away. You following me? Hope you're following me, because I can't even follow myself. Okay, so 5,000 years later, we get to 3000 BC. The Crimson Dragon would have fought another battle at Nazca, where it fought the wicked gods, sealing them into the earth, creating the Nazca lines. This battle between dragons was part of fated battles between the signers and dark signers that occurred every 5,000 years. Fun fact, the Nazca lines are a real thing in Peru. Now,
Yes,
whether
they
giant
are.
dual monster gods reside inside of them has yet to be seen in real life. Hopefully we don't see any of that. Now we jump ahead a couple thousand more years to a 1000-ish BC. It's not really 1000 BC, it's 1000-ish. This one was 3000 BC in the dub. So this is where a lot of the lore and history from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series dealing with the pharaohs and the Millennium items in ancient Egypt all takes place. Before Atem, aka Yami Yugi, aka Other Yugi, aka the Pharaoh, aka Yugi Boy, but with bomb-ass eyeshadows, his father Aknam Kanan was in charge, and he had a contentious relationship with his jealous brother Akhenaten. At first, things were peaceful. Atem was born, but their kingdom fell under attack. Aknam Kanon wanted peace, but Akhenaten felt violence was necessary. When the threat grew too great, Akhenaten suggested creating the Millennium Items from the Millennium Spellbook to help protect the kingdom. What he neglected to tell his brother was that there would be a sacrifice, and the sacrifice would require 99 lives. A sacrifice Akhenaten secretly carried out, what's referred to as the Kul Enna massacre. Now, the kingdom was saved, but when Aknam Kanon found out about the human sacrifice, he got really depressed, and then he died. Now, aside from the creation of the Millennium Items and the whole fate of Egypt changing, the Kul Enna massacre led to two things. Atem would eventually become the pharaoh, and Bandit King Bakura, the original entity of the spirit inside regular Bakura's Millennium Ring, had its own sentience separated from the Bandit King, who witnessed the tragedy as a child firsthand. This would set off his path of vengeance. Totally not convoluted at all. A very basic, simple card game story. During this time, dual monster cards didn't even exist yet. So how did the pharaoh, Bandit King Bakura, and priest Seto, who isn't Seto Kaiba, and others duel? Via giant stone tablets, which could summon apparitions of monsters, of course. We'll quickly summarize the important duels that happened. Bakura raided Atem's father's tomb, causing Atem to summon Obelisk the Tormentor and demolishing his ass. Then you had the Battle King Bakura lose again to Mahad, a priest who served under Atem. However, to win, Mahad merged with his Ka, a dual monster spirit, becoming the Dark Magician. Yeah, there's a fun fact. Dark Magician was at one point just some dude. Yeah. Now, Bakura managed to win one over Akhenaten, infusing him with evil in the process, somehow creating Blue Eyes White Dragon. Yeah, even Blue Eyes White Dragon was just a dude. Some more stuff happened, and this all leads to Bandit King Bakura and Atem's second Ka battle, in which Atem is defeated, setting off a chain of events eventually leading to the big bad of the Egypt, aka Dawn of the Duel arc. So, it turns out Yami Bakura, who had been manipulating events behind the scenes, was actually being used as a vessel by Zork Necrophades, a great evil god whose power was tapped into to create the Millennium Items. Yeah, totally normal stuff. So anyway, Bandit King summons him and takes the combined efforts of Atem, Priest Seto, regular Yugi, regular Kaiba, and friends who, if we've forgotten to mention, would have experienced these events via Memory World to take him down, which involves nonsense like the Pharaoh becoming the Black Luster Soldier and fusing with Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon from Season 5, Episode 46, as well as the good guys summoning the Creator of Light. It was in the middle of this climactic battle we found Yami Yugi's real name was Atem all along from Season 5, Episode 47. After the battle, Yugi and pals returned to the real world, and Atem names Priest Seto the next Pharaoh before crumbling to dust. And that, folks, finished our time in ancient Egypt and 1000 BC. But as an aside, elsewhere, Leaster, a secret society type group from 5Ds, first formed. So somewhere like around here, maybe? Yeah. On another note, in an unknown time in the past too, around, I don't know, Yubel from GX and the original Supreme Kings were living their first lives in Neospace. That makes total sense, right? Right? All right, from here, we jump way forward in time. But before we catch up to Yugi and the gang, we have to mention his grandfather's expedition to the Valley of the Kings, the Pharaoh burial ground in the 1960s. It's here when he obtained the Millennium Puzzle before giving it to Yugi at the start of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. We also want to note that chronologically, the Battle City's big bad Marik's tragic backstory, which involves patricide, happened sometime before the show began. Marik was 16 at the time of Battle City, and he was 11 when this whole backstory went down. So we can call this period, 1990X, because we don't know the exact date, minus 5 years. Yeah, that's what we'll say. Yeah. A second thing to note, at another unspecific time before the series begins, Kaiba takes over his dad's company.
Finally, some guy who isn't Albert Einstein, named Dr. Eisenstein, starts repeatedly running the Nobel Prize in Dual Physics from 1996 onwards.
Yes, dual physics. E equals MC dual. Down here, 1996. I guess. Kazuki Takahashi started the original manga in 1996, our time, not Yu-Gi-Oh time. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, the anime, started in 2000. Not many hard dates are given, but the events of the show can be assumed to happen around this time, which we'll call 1990X. Okay, so sometime in 1990X, somewhere between 96 and the year 2000, Yugi's grandfather gives him the Millennium Puzzle. When Yugi solves the Millennium Puzzle, he becomes one with Yami Yugi, revealed to be Atem, the pharaoh from the 1000-ish BC. So far, Kaiba destroys Yugi's grandfather's Blue Eyes White Dragon. And Grandpa gets more owned when Pegasus traps him in the Shadow Realm, which doesn't exist, actually. Check out History of Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos for that bombshell of a fact. Pegasus also reveals his Millennium Eye in the process, and eventually the whole squad travels to Pegasus Island to rescue Grandpa in the classic Dual Kingdom arc of the series, where we get this little neat doodad with the little stars, and yeah, good times. Duelist Kingdom is the first huge story in Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, Yugi wins nearly all of his duels except for the time Kaiba pretty much threatened to kill himself if Yugi doesn't let him win. Yeah, totally normal stuff, Kaiba. Also, early in the Duelist Kingdom arc, we meet Bakura, who is the owner of the Millennium Ring, in which inside Yami Bakura, who is secretly Zork Nephrophades, lurks inside. Yeah, you following me? Keep on following. So, back to Kaiba.
He used that drastic measure against Yugi because Pegasus had Shadow Realmed his brother, Mokuba, like Yugi's grandpa.
After he beats Yugi, he gets the chance to take on Pegasus, and fails and gets Shadow Realmed himself. Womp womp. Spoiler alert, Yugi wins the Duelist Kingdom tournament, defeats Pegasus, and saves everybody. So we see some nods to the overarching story in the epilogue. Yami Bakura yanks Pegasus' Millennium Eye out of his body, and we're introduced to a Millennium Key owning Shadi, a mysterious character who gave originally Pegasus the eye during an unspecified time in the past. Shadi even enters Yugi's mind and sees it as an entirely separate chamber for Yami Yugi. At the end of the epilogue episode, he warns Yugi that whoever stole Pegasus' eye would come for the puzzle. After Yugi and Co. takes a brief hiatus from cards to play dice, we start a very plot-heavy arc. Battle City arc. So, Battle City really upped the stakes. The whole thing is kickstarted when Ishtar, owner of the Millennium Necklace, reveals Duel Monster's secret ancient Egyptian history to Kaiba and tells him about the 3 Egyptian god cards. She even gives him Obelisk the Tormentor, after which he sets up a city-wide tournament where winners take cards from the losers in an attempt to find the other 2 cards. However, Kaiba's not the only one looking for the god cards. Enter Marek, owner of the Millennium Rod, and his team of rare hunters who are willing to utilize underhanded tactics to get what they want. At this point, Yami Yugi starts wondering about his origins, and after meeting Ishtar, who tells him if he wants his memories, he has to recover all 7 Millennium items. Yeah, this arc becomes one big mess. Delicious. Like before, we can't go over every duel.
Still good.
There's a lot of duels, but I will give you the summary. So,
Yugi and friends duel the rare hunters and other randoms a bunch, obtaining Slifer the Sky Dragon along the way.
Before, Marek reveals himself and generally comes out on top. Yami Yugi and Yami Bakura duel once again, and by this point, everyone's aware Bakura has an evil side. Marek, the bad guy, has a eviler Yami Marek inside of him too, who dominates My Valentine in a trio of episodes that were heavily censored in the US because it clearly shows in the Japanese version that My Valentine gets tortured. This is about cards, by the way. This is about card
Yeah,
games.
it is. It's supposed to be about cards.
Ishtar is revealed to be Marek's sister, and we're brought to the climax of the arc with Yugi, Joey, Kaiba, and Marek in the Battle City semifinals. Actually, before the semifinals begin, we get a filler arc which involves Yugi and the gang going into a virtual world where they hold an entirely separate tournament. Here they take on the Kaiba Corp Big Five and Noah Kaiba, Seto Kaiba's dad's actual son, because Seto and Mokuba were adopted for clarity's sake, for people that don't know that. We also get the details about how Kaiba took over his father's company, which was quite ruthless. Other than that, not much else happens of note in that arc. Anyway, after the interruption, Battle City begins to wrap up. The first battle is between Joey and Yami Marek, and guess who wins? Then Yugi and Kaiba have at it again, and Kaiba hands over Obelisk, the Tormentor, to Yugi when he inevitably loses. Of course, Yugi wins the whole thing. We hope you aren't too surprised about that fact. After though, Yami Marek gets banished to the Shadow Realm, and everyone is just cool with regular Marek now. Winning the duel, Yugi gains possession of the Winged Dragon of Ra, meaning he now has all 3 God cards. That's it for Battle City now, but what happens next though? A quick interruption, that's what happens. Chronologically, after the Battle City arc that takes place, but before the final arc of the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, we actually get the last 2 episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. What the fuck does that mean? Let me tell you. So there's an important duel between Jaden and Yugi that never aired in the US. So around here, Jaden fights Yugi. I'll explain more when we get to GX. Now, whether Jaden Yugi actually gets sent back in time to duel with Yugimoto, or if it's more of an imagination, a spiritual, or alternate timeline thing, who's to say? Not me. I'm just some guy. Anyway, putting that aside, we ask again. What happens after Battle City? Well, back-to-back filler arcs, of course. Okay, so maybe the filler arcs should have been taken seriously. However, these bait-to-sell children's trading card arcs really didn't offer much in the way of lore. But that Atlantis bit we mentioned earlier does come from this Walking the Dragon arc though, which is a hefty 40 episodes. In summary, Yugi Boy gets his god cards yanked and his soul stolen away, leaving Yami Yugi by himself. The gang eventually travels to Atlantis for like a second and leaves it in pieces. Yugi and Yami, who again is Atem, agrees to find out Yami's past together. This would lead us straight into the final arc, but instead we have a filler tournament that Yugi obviously wins. Really, believe us when we say nothing happens. But there is a guy called Abe the Monkey Man, though. Shouts out to Abe the Monkey Man. So here's the thing about the final arc. We already talked about most of it. It's the Dawn of the Duel arc, which largely takes place in the past, or at least a reimagining of the past called Memory World. So at this point, Bakura's trapped in the Millennium Ring and Yami Bakura begins to make his move. Secretly hitches a ride with Yami Yugi to the past, because Millennium items can do that, I guess. And an episode later, Shandi sends out regular Yugi and Ko first into Yami Yugi's mind and then eventually to the past with his Millennium Key. What happens next though? Well, pause the video and go back to when I talked about the 1000-ish BC section when you get up to this part. It's like a real life time travel, but I'll show you in visually what happens. So around, so this is when Jaden fights Yugi, and around here, which will be again 1990X, I get it, question mark, Yugi and the gang with Bakura go back in time using the Millennium item. So here's some little dotted line for time travel. So this is when Yugi and the gang with Bakura, they all go back in time to 1000-ish BC, see the Atem, and help him defeat the great evil. But once again, I don't know if this is actually a timeline travel, but or an alternate dimension. So technically, everyone's spirits are sent to a recreation of the past, like I just said, as opposed to being there directly in like a time travel situation. A similar version of these events occurred in the real 1000-ish BC, but obviously without Yugi and the gang. And it's not quite clear whether the actual past was changed or if it was only in this new version. A divergent or a duplicate timeline? Whatever you want to call it, it was made to sell cards for children, and it wasn't so deeply thought out. We get a few epilogue episodes that center around the only 2 people in the series that have yet to duel, Yugi and Atem. Yugi wins. Atem fades away, and the Millennium items disappear due to plot. Fun fact though, in 2016, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions, a movie, came out. And in that story, we have Kaiba digging up the remains of the Millennium items, recrafting the puzzle so that he can meet Atem again to fight him, to beat him, because, you know, Kaiba is Seto Kaiba, and he loses, but then after that, at the end of the movie, Kaiba actually sends his own consciousness straight to the afterlife in ancient Egypt to duel Atem once again, because he needs to prove to, I don't know, himself, I guess, that he's the greatest duel master of all times. Yeah, God. Kaiba, Seto Kaiba. So roughly around 1990X time, in GX though, Chancellor Shepard taught Zane Trustdale how to use the Cyber End Dragon. Maybe we'll be able to update the timeline in the future, but that's the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters for now. Fear not though, there's still Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5D, so let's chaz it up and get down to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. GX is...
Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, I think I watched like 10 episodes of it. I really couldn't get into it because this show is pretty much like a the show is pretty much like a okay, I'm turning you on, I'm gonna put you on the screen, but I'm gonna fall asleep. That's how Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was to me. So but yeah, let's get back into the video and stuff.
Is set 10 years after the original series ends. Not counting the events of Dark Side of Dimensions, we can call this GX period 2000X. And acknowledge that it could be anywhere in between 2001 and 2009. So it's never stated exactly when Duel Academy was made. And something that makes its history more tricky is that in the dub, Seto Kaiba is said to have established Duel Academy, which makes it feasible that it was built in that time frame. However, originally the ancient Kagemaru, antagonist of the first major GX arc, was its founder. Not existing in the original show, it's hard to say when it was really built. Also, sometime before the series began, Kagemaru locked away the sacred beast inside the sacred gate inside the school. Sometime around this time? Yep. That's the mystery period right there. So, a few years before this series begins, before GX begins, Jaden wins a contest where his original duel monsters get sent into space by a satellite by Kaiba Corp. Yubel, an actual card and former Neo-Spacian human turned monster spirit who's looked after Jaden since he was a kid, also gets sent up into space. This leads to wackiness further down in the timeline. GX proper starts with Jaded Yuki getting handed a winged Kuribo by Yugi himself on the way to Duel Academy entrance ceremonies. So here we go, it's the start of GX. I should have also mentioned that Yu-Gi-Oh! I guess starts here, formally. Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, so in GX, the first major arc of the series revolves around the Shadow Riders, a group of nefarious duelists who Jaden, Chaz, and Co. have to defeat so they don't resurrect the sacred beasts and destroy the world. Of course. Yes, the scales have been upped since Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Jaden beats Kagemaru, who's leading them, and seals the sacred beasts once more. Before the second arc of GX begins, Zane Trustdale, who is Jaden's best friend's brother and the top-rated duelist in the Duel Academy, graduates and joins the Protégés. The beginning of the second season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX marks a year both in real life and in story since the series began. So we'll call this in a totally easy manner with 2000X plus 1 year. The second chunk of GX revolves around the Society of Light, a secret society led by Sartorius. Aster Phoenix, a highly skilled pro-league level duelist, joins Duel Academy. Jaden loses to him in a duel, in the middle of which Aster gets really cryptic and decides to leave Duel Academy for good. Spoilers, it's not for good. Bad. Jaden gets sent to Neo-Space, technically a spirit dimension and not actually space, and talks to aliens who look like the monster cards he designed that Kaiba Corp sent to space. After, he comes back with new cards. Episode 62 might be the single weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode of all time, but then again, Arc 5 exists. Jaden and Co. win some duels, and before long, Sartorius ends up joining the Academy. Elsewhere, Zane becomes edgy and duels with Chancellor of the school in an old secret dojo location, who pleads with Zane to come back after losing to take part in a special tournament. Aster betrays the Society of Light, more duels happen, people get mind-controlled and then unmind-controlled, and there's even more duels. Eventually, Chaz wins the tournament. Go get him, Chaz. Chaz it up. Yeah. And Jaden thwarts Sartorius' plan. So season 2 ends and another season, year, and arc starts, which we will call this year 2000X plus 2 years from, I guess, 2000X originally, even though it should be plus 1 year, but that'll be way too confusing. So 2000X plus 2 years. Now we enter Dimension World, which is the last arc of GX to be dubbed. At the beginning of the season, Jesse Anderson, who shares a lot of common with Jaden, joins Duel Academy. After beating the mid-boss of the third arc, Viper, a big chunk of Duel Academy students ends up in a strange realm. In this place, all sorts of Duel monster cards are just real monsters now. Through the power of dueling, most of the students make it back, but Jesse gets stranded while Yubel makes her first big appearance. They all immediately go back to the other dimension to rescue Jesse, and things get dark on the journey. Slave camps, brutalities, live sacrifices, and more. Very friendly kid card game stuff right here, folks. Along the way, Jaden realizes he is the Supreme King, whatever the that is, and they eventually find Jesse, who is now under Yubel's control. There's a series of climactic duels, and how does that all resolve? Well, Yubel reveals her backstory. Being a human-turned-spirit that watched over Jaden, and she really just misses him. Okay, and then Jaden Yuki uses super polymerization to fuse himself with Yubel forever. And so this is where Yu-Gi-Oh! GX ended. According to 4Kids TV, no, that is not the end. Surprise, you can watch the rest of GX, Japanese version, on Crunchyroll.com. So this season was about half as long as the others. It centered around an enemy called Night Shroud, who made a couple of minor appearances previously. The Yubel arc was really the crux of the GX lore. So this last set of episodes was more like a hurrah, victory lap, you know? That said, we had a very nice graduation moment. And at the very end, Jaden does get sent back in time to duel with Yugi. So let me show you that on the board. So after 2000X 2 years, supposedly, also fun fact, I read on this thread that in season 2, in one of the examination cards, they showed the date, and the date is supposed to be 2007 as the graduation. So supposedly, they graduate around the year 2007, maybe. So after the graduation, Jaden over here goes back in time to here. Jaden goes back in time to duel with Yugi right here. Okay, so that is the true end of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So now let's chaz it down. Grab your motorcycle and noom towards the future. How far into the future though? There's no exact dates given, and in fact, there's a lot of contradictory information. So all we can say is that Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds takes place in the mysterious time of 20XX. Real quick, 17 years before.
Yes, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Sequels known to man. Once I watched 5Ds, I felt like I was watching the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And even though they was using motorcycles, but the character development, the storyline, you know what I'm saying, it felt like a good series to watch. And it was like, you know, they in the nomads, you got a nomads area, then you got the big city, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, you know, hey, like you don't belong here, but look, I belong here and stuff. This is where I belong. I met some nice friends. I'm a good person, but y'all put me in the nomad zone. So like 5Ds was really good to me, and I really do like it. And yeah, so let them talk about 5Ds. Let's get into it.
Or the series begins, which we will call 20XX minus 17 years, the Zero Reverse occurred, an intentional energy overlord masterminded by Iliesta. Remember from early on in the video, I forgot exactly when I even talked about Iliester. And carried out by Roman Goodwin. It split New Domino City into two and freed the Earthbound Immortals. Yusei Fudo's father, an NRD researcher who worked with Roman and Rex Goodwin, as well as his mother and Jack Atlas's parents, died during this tragedy that takes place. Actually, let me just do a little. Okay, so before the start of the series, which is here, Yusei, Jack, Crow, and Kalen form a dual gang called the Enforcers that eventually fell
Enforcers.
through. Okay, so the first proper arc of 5Ds is the Fortune Cup tournament, which mostly serves to introduce all the key players like Yusei Fudo, Jack Atlas, Akiza, and others. We also
Akiza.
start learning about signers, duelists with special
Yep.
glowing marks on their body, which include Yusei and Jack. There are also dark signers. Stuff starts to get hype during the climax of the tournament, a duel between Yusei and Jack where the sky gets dark and the Crimson Dragon appears in the sky. Then we get the 40-episode Dark Signer arc, which is more lore intense. Using the Crimson Dragon's appearance as a sign, the Dark Signers put their plans into motion. They're comprised of people who hold some kind of grudge, most notable Roman Goodwin, and they wield the Earthbound Immortals, previously trapped in Nazca, freed due to the Zero Reverse incident. Their goal is to use the Earthbound Immortals to cause havoc and eventually summon the King of the Netherworld. Whew. That's their plan. Easy. So easy to follow. Okay, so despite the Signers beating the Dark Signers and Earthbound Immortals, Plot Magic still ends up summoning said King of the Netherworld. Rex Goodwin actually reveals himself to be a Signer and a Dark Signer. Bum, bum, bum. And also, surprise, is the real big bad of the series.
Okay, so hold up. I have to make another correction. So, Rex's backstory actually gets kind of screwed up because of a dub error. Now, in the dub, Rex is revealed that he's the 5th signer during the Fortune Cup, but the arm that he uses to reveal that he's a signer is actually Roman's arm. Roman was the true 5th signer until he became a Dark Signer. So then Rex duels Roman to purposely lose. It's revealed that Rex had a Solemn Judgment face down and could have won at any time, and he now becomes a Dark Signer. Okay, so then Rex then attaches Roman's arms to him to become the 5th signer and final Dark Signer. Despite these setbacks, the good guys ends up winning. Who could have guessed? We'll jump forward 6 months, which we will call right here 20XX plus 6 months. We see a tablet fall to Earth from space. It's quickly retrieved by that probably nefarious group, Iliaster. Duelists everywhere start gearing up for the World Racing Grand Prix, which turns out Iliaster has a hand in it too. The World Racing Grand Prix eventually gets underway, which many of the episodes were just never aired nor dubbed. So maybe you haven't seen any of them. Anyways, after winning a handful of duels, Yusei has an encounter with Lazar, who spells some details with Iliaster, including a connection with the Moment Express Development Agency. When they storm the agency over the next 2 episodes, what they learn and what happens really complicates things. So, what did that all mean in English exactly? So, let me break it down. Moment Express houses a machine called Infinity, which can not only transport matter, but can do something like crossing space and time by creating wormholes. Yes. Basically, this means Iliaster can and has used the power to change history. In fact, Yusei gets zucked up into a wormhole and, after experiencing a vision of his father, gets spat out in a world where the Grand Prix team lineup has changed and the Moment Express building doesn't exist. Infinity ability to make these wormholes and travel back and forth in time is called falsification of history. So, we'll call this new timeline 2000X plus 6 FH, falsification history, shortened down. The way it seems on this board is, so we go down here, and then right here is when the Infinity Stone, haha, that's a joke, Infinity Wormhole gets created. Yusei falls into it, and pop, out a new timeline, 2000XX plus 6 falsification of history, sorry, yeah. Despite this, timeline shift, the tournament continues, and Team Yusei wins, even when it's revealed that the finalist is the Emperor of Iliaster. Again, another shock. The dub version of 5Ds ends right here, but like GX, the truth is out there, which you can watch on Crunchyroll.com. Okay, so what happens past the dubbed version? Well, turns out there's something called the Ark's Cradle, and it's about to fall
on New Domino City.
A league of various antagonists throughout the series, led by Zone, get in the way of Yusei and Co. trying to stop it. After all the bad guys get beaten or converted to good guys, Yusei and Zone have their final duel.
But there's still more surprises in store.
First of all, Zone is Yusei from the far future. Or, as it's revealed, he did some future plastic surgery and decided to look like Yusei and act like Yusei to save the rest of humanity.
More on that in a second.
So, even with all that effort, Yusei wins and Zone is humanized at the very end, sacrificing himself to save everybody in Yusei's place.
Okay, so we're treated to a couple of epilogue episodes that take place 6 months after that. So we can call this 20XX plus 1 year false historification. Yeah. So Yusei duels Jack one last time, winning. And before watching everyone set off on their new journeys, Yusei becomes a scientist just like his dad, creating a new energy system that'll help everybody and hopefully not blow up and destroy the world. And we get to see a clip 8 years into the future, which we will call 20XX plus 9 years false historification, where we see glimpses of Jack, Akiza, and the others' future. The end? Well, yes, but we have 2 loose ends to go over before wrapping up this timeline video. So, first off, what about Z1's future? Well, he came 200 years from the future, so we'll call this time 2200XX. Yeah, that's how math works. Basically, from what I can tell, I think it's before the infinity thing happened, so it's on this timeline, around here, 22XX, is when, you know, the timeline that's Z1's time, and then Z1 sent back himself and his agents around this time, or around here or here? Not 100% sure, but he does send himself and 4 other agents back from the year 22XX back in time. So at some of these points, yeah. So turns out that Z1 and the gang is impervious to the falsification of history events. So I guess we can assume that 22XX is the same future for both the 20XX and 20XX false history timelines. So I'm trying to think. Maybe it goes back like here, and then the tragedy doesn't happen, and then we get possibly a 20XX good timeline? So that's the last bit of major canon in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters timeline. But then again, one last thing we have to get out of the way before letting you go. How do we know 5D's canon? So GX has enough characters from the original come through that we can definitely consider it canon, even if certain details don't hold up under scrutiny. Okay, so the thing with 5Ds is that it's so far into the future and has its own mythology with signers. That's why many people don't consider it part of the canon. But we need to talk about the second Yu-Gi-Oh! Film, Bonds Beyond Time. A film that starts midway through 5Ds, then goes back to sometime at the end of GX, and finally both Yusei and Jaden travel to Yugi's time in 19XX. So now talking about the movie, it seems to be canon with 5Ds, taking place after Dark Signers, but before the World Grand Prix Championship, which is around, I believe, here. So the main baddie in that movie is Z1's lackeys called Paradox, and Paradox, I believe, uses a one of those rare dragon cards. I think that card takes them back in time, and so Yusei goes back in time after graduation and after Jaden fights Yugi. So Yusei meets Jaden, they duel again, and then the same guy, Paradox, uses that ability to time travel again, and then they time travel to around here to meet Yugi. So Yusei, and Jaden. Okay, so the weird bit is that Yugi acts like he's never met Jaden before, which is false because, as we all know, at the end of GX, right here, Jaden goes back in time and fights Yugi right there. And then they meet again. But also, this could be a thing where Jaden and Yusei went to an alternative past. not actually this timeline past. So that's why I didn't mention it when we're first making the timeline. We're doing it right now. But it is considered canon. This movie is considered canon. And so we can clearly see that Yusei and Yugi are in the same timeline universe. So therefore, 5Ds is in the universe. Also, another thing that connects 5Ds to the Yu-Gi-Oh! OG universe is this one dude named Tetsu Trudge,
who in the 5Ds universe works as a member of Sector Security.
And in the original Yu-Gi-Oh, he was a high schooler who, in a flashback, we see beating up Joey and Tristan. As the B-roll will make that make sense. So he was basically high schooler here, and now he's a grown-ass man working for the security department somewhere in the 5Ds universe. So that's another thing. There's two key facts why 5Ds is part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe. That is it, folks. Well, not obviously, because we didn't include Zexal, Arc 5, and Brains. So I guess it really isn't it. So, okay. So I know I said I'll get back to how Zexal and Arc 5 is all connected, but here's a short breakdown. So apparently, this is from a YouTuber named @Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, but he thinks that sometime after GX, Kaiba and Kaiba Corp is no more, and the NRD moment isn't created, and so it doesn't cause a giant world-splitting event. So that's why in the Zexal world, there's no bikes, there's no synchros. So now, you might say, Tim, isn't that just an alternative universe somewhere else, unconnected? But no. You see, in episode 15 of Zexal, we see the main character go into a temple, and he sees old legendary dual monster statues, like Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Red Eyes Black Dragon, and others. So, which shows that the original Yu-Gi-Oh! World existed in the Zexal world, which connects Zexal to the timeline, supposedly. So apparently, somewhere around here, Kaiba died, and then didn't happen, and then a new alternate dimension started, and then that's Zexal. Yeah, there we go. That's Zexal. That's Zexal world right there. It just goes off in its own, and that's a terrible way to show it on the board. But now, for Arc 5, there is an image of the Leo Dual School's curriculum sheet, and it talks about synchro summoning and Fudo style. So this also shows that in this world of Arc 5, there's game mechanics that come from 5Ds. So how is that so? Well, in Arc 5, they just straight up go, yeah, the universe was originally one, but it's split into 4 different universes, and people can just travel to each other's universes freely. So that's how advanced they are. So maybe it's part of the alternate 5Ds universe timeline, or so someone from the Arc 5 world using the dimension hopping hoppity goodness goes to the 5Ds world. This is terrible. Somewhere along the 5Ds world, and just takes the technology of synchros, the bikes, Fudo style, I guess, and then just implements it in the Leo school. God, this board is looking terrible. Oh, fun fact, in Zexal, they say the entire universe was created from a dragon called Number 100 Numeron Dragon. So, I'm just gonna go and add this right here, 000 BC, the universe was created by a dragon. Okay, well, so I'm pretty much done. Okay, so here's the totally not completed and convoluted timeline of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline universe. And if I made any mistakes or mispronunciations of names, like I usually.
All right, so pretty much, that's the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I say, rest in peace to the guy who created Yu-Gi-Oh! May he rest in peace. But like I say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the show. I like the Dual Monsters, which is the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And also I like the 5Ds Yu-Gi-Oh! I did not like GX. GX was like a sleeper to me. You know what I'm saying? I just put GX on and go to sleep on it. So but 5Ds and Dual Monsters is watch them. watch them series because you're gonna like Yu-Gi-Oh. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, please like, comment, and subscribe. Days Reacts, and please like, comment, and subscribe. Progress Gaming, and I'll catch y'all later. Deuces.